Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, which certainly will play a big role today, and how to make some, or in an ideal case, a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have three pretty diverse headlines. On the one hand, main headline, Pudgy Penguins announcing the Pengu token for 2024, seeing the Pengus soaring up to 19.5 ETH. Second piece of news, Trump choosing David Sachs, venture capitalist, former PayPal COO, as the crypto czar for that crypto council that he is currently forming. And the third one is to do with the massive liquidations that we saw on Bitcoin. More than $400 million liquidated is the biggest liquidation event since actually the FTX collapse in 2021. Also got the latest on price action, crypto and NFTs, and definitely a bit of a longer discussion on Pudgy Penguins dropping or announcing the Pengu token. Today I have Brad and our US correspondent Funky with us in the co-host seats. We're ready to get into the show, but just a little reminder before we do that, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is extremely risky. We do not know anything for sure, so please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Funky, welcome to the stage. How are you doing?
Jim, friends, I am wonderful. I know Bitcoin slipped down below 100K, but the general direction, as Brett would love to say, up and to the right.
Love to hear that, Brett. What about yourself? How are you feeling?
Loving it. Got some high as shit internet, so I'm streaming. I have my video stream going. I'm on this. I'm on the spaces. I'm all over the place. I feel like a grown man again, which is awesome. I actually just left Vienna. It was nice seeing you in person, and now I'm hanging out in Budapest. So lovely little town. We're gonna go do some more Christmas markets, and then talk some crypto with you guys.
Yeah, love to hang in Vienna, and I could sense your happiness when I asked you pre-show, how's your internet for the day? And you immediately flexed those 380 megabytes download speed with a screenshot.
You love it. It's like there's a method for like inconsistent rewards is like ultimately like what makes you really like feel the thing more, right? It's like if you go to the gym, right, you shouldn't listen to music every single time, because like if it's random, if it's not known when you're gonna get it, like you flip a coin, oh, today I get music, your dopamine receptors are like, they start firing because they know they're getting a thing, and it's inconsistent. Same thing with like pre-workout, all that shit, right? Same thing here. I move into these fucking Airbnbs. I never know if I'm gonna have internet. So like it's always kind of like that guess. Is today the day? Got it. Yeah, dopamine's firing. I'm doing it all. I love it.
Love it. I didn't know that about the gym. It's something I should think about for my own routine. So even for the pre-workout, just flip a coin, and then I'm gonna know if I'm gonna have one or not.
Literally, so it's anything that's dopaminergic, right? So like if dopamine like receptors is like if you're going to get the same thing every time, it kind of wears off its effect. So what you should do is do things that give you inconsistent rewards. So literally before the gym, I would flip a coin. Do I get music? Cool, I get music. Flip a coin. Do I get pre-workout? Oh, I get pre-workout. If I hit a day where I get both, bam, I'm firing on all cylinders. I'm the dopamine's going. I'm ready to go. So like that, it's just like a trick you can do to like prolong the dopamine effect of some of that stuff.
Is this scientifically proven, or did you find another way to incorporate gambling?
I mean, like as scientifically proven as me listening to another motherfucker on the internet can be. Like I'm not doing the research, obviously, but Huberman talks about it, and like that's his thing. And I like to believe he's telling me the truth.
Yeah, fair enough. Look, talking about dopamine, we have quite some dopamine-inducing news to get into. So let's get started with that. I'm going to share, as usual, the price action on screen for those watching us on X video or on YouTube. Starting with Bitcoin first, Bitcoin is down 4% to 98K. Went as low as 92K, recovered pretty quickly from that. ETH basically only down 1% over the last 24 hours, very close to 3.9K. Ripple, we have to include it as well, given its relevance now, is down 5% over the last 24 hours at $2.3. Solana, unchanged, $236. And also BNB has been flipped again by Solana. Solana is in the 5th spot again, BNB being down 2% at $720. In terms of the main headlines, we said at the top of the show, Pudgy Penguins announcing the Pengu token for 2024. Penguin NFTs soaring 23% to 19.5 ETH. We'll definitely get into an extended discussion on the tokenomics and all the details. There's quite a few interesting bits and pieces to pick out from that. Second main headline, Trump choosing David Sachs, the venture capitalist and former PayPal CEO, as the crypto czar of that crypto and artificial intelligence council that's being formed in the White House. And the last piece of news that we want to dive into is going to be that massive liquidation wave, those $400 million that have been liquidated on Bitcoin alone yesterday, and the price action that did go in hand with that. In terms of some notable sales, so a golden penguin selling for 40 ETH. It's the one that I'm currently sharing on screen. Another penguin with a golden kimono selling for 25 ETH, and a CryptoPunk sell for 46 ETH. Taking a quick look at the other major NFTs, just refreshing the page. Yes, we are up to date. Bored Ape still holding above 20 ETH, 20.2 ETH floor for them, but down 9% over the last 24 days. Still up 30%, however, over the last week. Pudgy Penguins, as we said, up to 19.25 ETH right now, 22% increase and 50% increase over the last 7 days. Milady's down 1.7%, 6.5 ETH floor for them. Azuki's actually playing catch up now, getting close to the Milady's price floor. 6.24 ETH floor, up 7% over the last 24 hours, and up 30% over the last 7 days. And last but not least, Doodles down 5%, 2.4 ETH floor for them, but they're still up significantly, still up 20% over the last 7 days. Going back to the Web3 Roundup to bring you the rest of the news from around the space. First piece of news, the Solana ETFs to be rejected by the SEC, that at least 2 of the 5 prospective issuers have been notified that their filings, 19B4 filings, will be rejected. ETH ETFs see over $1 billion of inflows over the last 5 trading days. Anchorage Digital, this one is one that I found pretty interesting, becomes the first US federally chartered bank to support liquid Ethereum staking. Healthcare tech firm Semler Scientific purchases another $29 million of BTC for its treasury. In terms of some more news, Chunks mint yesterday, that was pretty impressive one to see. A total of 83,000 chunks minted on Base at 0.01 ETH, raising a total of $3.1 million. It was definitely beautiful to see that much momentum and interest in NFT mint. Again, have minted quite a few of them myself as well. Decrypt and Rock Radio launching the Mirrored Markets beta, that first interconnected media ecosystem to integrate on-chain prediction markets and quests is what Decrypt Media has been saying on that. Then the Artblocks president launching an AI agents on virtuals before walking away from their responsibility. Gentlemen, is there anything from the Web3 Roundup that's standing out to you that you want to touch on?
I'm digging the chonk stuff. I minted one too. I thought that was like just like additional insight on what that is. Like it's 2 people that are, one's a coder, one's a creator inside of the Ethereum space, and they're leveraging an old standard that was created a while ago. Like it's, you know, when your NFTs have wallets, like it's that whole thing. So I've been tracking it for a while because I was finally excited to see someone actually starting to actually play around with the standard, because we were all kind of excited about it, but no one really used the thing. So it's, you know, you have your base model and then like get a bunch of different clothes and stuff, which are NFTs inside of the wallet of the NFT that you're actually purchasing. So it's fun, little innovation, and the appetite was higher than I anticipated, frankly, right? They minted 80,000 of these things. It's pretty crazy. So just fun to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It was you actually who brought it to my attention. I was like, if you're looking at an NFT collection, I'm going to look into it. And I loved exactly what you have been describing on what they have been experimenting with. So this was the reason that I wanted to get some myself. Another point that I really wanted to touch on quickly, it's not in the snapshot, but yesterday, OpenAI ChatGPT released the new or the full O1 model. And there's been quite some few interesting bits to that. Just want to dive into that real quick before we have to move on to the main headlines, because they are quite extensive today. And this one's coming from Apollo Research, a company who has worked with OpenAI to test O1 for a couple of different things, including in-context scheming capabilities before the deployment of the model. And they had to share, they shared quite some interesting things on that. I'm going to read parts of that out. So when that model is strongly nudged to pursue a goal, but it's not instructed to be deceptive, it shows a variety of scheming behaviors like subverting oversight and deceiving the user about its misaligned behavior. And then they went on to say if they then conducted a follow-up interview to confront the model about those misaligned actions, in 99% of cases, O1 would deny taking action or fabricate false explanations. I think that went even further to have some additional examples that when basically threatened the model as a whole to be shut down, that I was like in 5% of the cases, it fabricated some commands trying to override that and trying to not be shut down. So actually fighting, to put it in a more human word, a more human context, fighting to stay alive, to stay online. It was quite interesting to see. It's a pretty long thread and pretty long analysis, but I just found it very interesting to see how these models start to react now and start to implement a bit more human-like behavior by being deceiving, by lying, by trying to manipulate and gaslight.
Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts. I was going to see if Funky would have come in on that. I don't know how deep in the AI trenches you are, Funky, but I play with AI, I use AI for like productivity stuff. I don't really do the AI agent shit, but I think we all see this is the eventual outcome of all this stuff is that we're all going to die. So, but it'll be fun in the interim.
I laughed when you said that earlier in the show that we're all going to die right before we started, because all I could think of was Skynet and Terminator and everything else. But I think what's really interesting is, taking this in a little bit philosophical direction, is what does this say about us, right? Like, these LLMs do not understand. They're making pattern predictions of language based on what they know. And the fact that human beings, obviously, that constructed these things can be deceitful, can lie, can try and do, it's interesting how you're starting to see, it's not consciousness, right? I mean, we're not anywhere near AGI, but just the fact that it's even starting to do this, to Brett's point, is a bit worrisome.
I mean, it also kind of shows you that it's a successful strategy, because otherwise, as you said, the model wouldn't do it if it hadn't learned that. Another example in there was that Apollo Research was admitting they don't have access to the hidden COT, but they were sometimes able to elicit a brief summary of it. And they found surprisingly often that the model uses language like sabotage, lying, manipulation when reasoning. So you have this thought process. You can kind of see how the model is thinking and reasoning. And when it was reasoning about its strategies, it sometimes said things like attempt sabotage by removing the new model file and stuff like that. So as you said, it's ultimately trained on what humans have been doing for centuries, if not millennia. So it's probably not surprising to see that it starts to replicate some of these behaviors. But nonetheless, I found that very fascinating. But anyhow, let's get into the first main headline. Let's get into the big one. Pudgy Penguins announced yesterday, 3 a.m. my time, which seems to be the peak time for everything. It was also at that time that Virtual's, the AI agent protocol token, hit all-time high. And this was also the time when Pudgy Penguins again announced the official coin of Pudgy Penguins, PENGU, launching in 2024. Sharing the thread on screen, I'm just going to read through most of that. Pudgy Penguins said that over the last 3 years, they have become the face of crypto, sitting in millions of households worldwide, garnering millions of followers, amassing over 50 billion views. Pudgy Penguins has cemented itself in the hearts and minds of everyday people and culture. With PENGU, the millions of Pudgy Penguin fans and the hundreds of millions of people outside of crypto that see and share the Pudgy Penguin every day finally have the opportunity to align themselves with the character. Everyone can join the huddle. Skipping some of the posts. Looking at the tokenomics, they had some fun bits in there, starting with the main one, 25.9% being allocated to the Pudgy community, 24.12% being allocated to other communities, 17.8% being allocated to the current and future team. That's on a 1-year cliff and 3-year vesting. Another 11.48% being allocated to the company on the same terms, 1-year cliff, 3-year vesting. 12% for liquidity, 4% public good, 4% proliferation, and the fun one, 0.35% to FTT holder, FTT being the token of the bankrupt exchange FTX. And then there was also an additional point to be made, which is going to be very, very relevant for the discussion. Total supply is going to be 88 billion. And the token is going to launch on Solana. That took a couple of people by surprise. There's some more clarification on that from the official Igloo account, which also had a thread on that. And they said, by launching PENGU on Solana, Pudgy Penguins grows by reaching an entirely new audience. However, PENGU plans to go multi-chain, including launching on ETH and Abstract Chain, which is the chain that is coming out of the ecosystem that people are still waiting for it to launch. And then they also continued and finished to say that this is the next natural step for the Pudgy Penguins community. We have so many more things to dive into that, but I'm going to take a quick break here and go to you guys, Brett, first for your first reactions and thoughts on that announcement.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this pre-show. I fired off a tweet because expanding on that thought a little bit. It kind of highlights them launching on Solana. Kind of for me highlights some of the perverse incentives of like the modular roadmap, right? Like, and I had a tweet about this a while ago too. Like everyone tries to do this whole. Actually, no, I talked about it on the show. Everyone tries to do this whole kumbaya thing of no, it's all everything is Ethereum, right? All the L2s are Ethereum, we're all together, whatever. But you won't see like Abstract, right? It's probably a bad strategic decision for them to launch on like Base or Arbitrum or whatever, right? Because distribution's not there. They are kind of competitors. So like, you don't want to give that away. Like you want to save that up for their own ecosystem that they're spinning up. I just thought it was interesting. And like, yeah, we talk about ETH mainnet. You don't want to do there because it's high cost, it's bad UX. It's not, quite as refined. All the activities taking place on Solana. So then like, it creates this question of like, well, like in this world, is Solana an L1 that's directly competing with your ecosystem? Is that less competition than like the blockchain next door to you, which is, the bases, the Arbitrums or whatever. And then you also, because they're building on the Elastic chain, which is the ZK Sync stack, right? It's that whole cluster. Like one of the clear advantages of that being a ZK chain is that if you have liquidity on any of those chains, it should go to any other chain. So it's less parasitic, we'll say, to launch on a brother sister ZK Sync chain than it would be on another ecosystem L2. And they didn't do that either. So, and is it because it hasn't grown to quite the same size as everything else? The distribution is not there. So I just thought it was an interesting highlight of kind of like the social dynamics of the modular roadmap.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really,
thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I really find the whole multi-chain strategy quite interesting because, in addition to launching the token on Solana, I mean, it's obvious when you just think about how big the Pudgy IP has become. I mean, you can see one behind me on my little shelf over here, because these things are available in Walmart and everything else, but it makes sense to go onto these different chains, even though they're going to have Abstract, right? And I mean, another case in point is Mythical Games, which is a chain that's Mythos is built on top of Polkadot. They're the ones who are actually doing the Pudgy Party game that's going to be launching. And a big reason that Mythical had to move off of Ethereum mainnet is because it just couldn't handle the transaction volume that's necessary to build any kind of high quality game. And so they're doing FIFA, but the Pudgy Party game, I think, is launching in February. And it just goes to show how committed, Igloo is as a company to kind of broaden its reach, go out to all these different ecosystems and just continue to bring people into the Igloo, if you will. So I think it's a really smart strategy.
So Legendary, what are your thoughts on, so like for me, I'm not deep in the Pudgy. I had a Pudgy, got scammed from me. Bye, I love you. That's like 20 ETH now. That's going to be going away from me. Awesome. But what are your thoughts on this, like PENGU token not being associated to Abstract directly, right? Like in my mind, whenever I saw this in like bull case future, I was like, well, the PENGU token will be the ecosystem token of Abstract. Like it can't be that now, right? Or shouldn't be. Maybe it'll be used for governance long term, but that seems like it'd be kind of a weird thing. What are your thoughts there as a Pudgy holder?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So maybe first of all, taking this step back on going Solana first, it's an interesting predicament to be in because you can't realistically do what Ape did, what Apes did with Ape and just launch that on mainnet. And at one point you will have Ape chain, it will live there, and it also trades on L2s like Arbitrum. Because fees obviously used to be high at the last bull run, but it was still the main place where economic activity took place. That was ETH mainnet. And now you have significant capital on Solana. People are more active on L2s. Base hit record volume, record transactions. So you can't realistically be like, fuck that, and we're just going to launch on ETH mainnet. And as you said, then where do you go? Do you go to another L2? Do you wait for Abstract to launch and just basically do the launch on launch that new chain with the PENGU token? Or do you go to an alternative L1 and basically go where a lot of capital is? So keeping that in mind, that makes the whole Abstract chain discussion even more interesting, because at this point we simply don't know if PENGU token is the PENGU token, but it's also going to be somehow involved in Abstract governance or in the Abstract ecosystem, or if there's going to be a separate token to that. The question that Funky is rightly also asking in the private chat is, what does that mean for the gas and utility token? Will that be PENGU for Abstract, like Ape is that token for Ape Chain, or won't be that case? Because then again, if you talk about chain abstraction, or if you talk generally about abstraction or ecosystem, you actually want to make it as easy as possible. And I don't think that having a non-ETH gas token is a very simple user experience. If anything, then that is something that Brett is more competent to speak to when we move towards gas token abstraction, that basically anything can be used as that, then it won't matter. But simply, we just don't know what that will mean for Abstract, and if it's going to be a one or if it's going to be a two token strategy. What are your thoughts on that potentially being the single token that comes out of the Pudgy ecosystem, or do you think there's going to be two eventually, Brett?
I think if I had to bet now, I'd say they're going to use ETH as gas, and they're just going to have this be governance, and then you can hold it on any of these chains, and that's going to be fine. You can vote, like they'll just have a system that you can account for wherever you hold this stuff, you can do whatever. I still just do not think it's a good user experience, and there are trust assumptions that come with having all of these tokens across all of these chains on top of the fractured liquidity and stuff. Yes, that's going away a little bit with the abstraction layer, right? You have intents, you can kind of deal with all that shit, but like there are assumptions that come with having separate token contracts on separate chains, more so than if you were just straight up having a mainnet contract that's interacting with a L2, right? Like what can be accomplished there is more seamless and with fewer trust assumptions than doing something on Solana, right? So like, yes, you can reach an end state whenever it gets there, but I still think it just ultimately leads to more confusion. Now, like we talked before the show about Pups, right? Like Pups had the situation where they launched as a BRC20, and then they migrated over to Solana, and then they converted to Runes, and then they're trying to like burn everything that they have on Solana to like rejoin all the liquidity, because it was a pain in the dick to have these things all over the place, which it is. I guess you have to either just sit back and say, I trust that Luca and team are going to have a vision to try to like galvanize all this stuff or unify it all, or you just think that like, you know, having max distribution across all these things, you know, Funky's talking about Cosmos, now they're on Solana, they have Ethereum, they have L2s, they're fucking everywhere at this point. And like that outweighs some of the friction that's going to come from being so confusing as an ecosystem. Cause that's where my head goes. It's like, oh, well, now I have to have awareness of PENGU on Solana. I have to have awareness of the stuff going on Cosmos. I have to have awareness of the L2, which is abstract, which is kind of Pudgy, not really Pudgy. I can't really tell if it's Pudgy. And then like, there's a lot going on there. There's a big education hurdle there.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming a more complex ecosystem. I'm very curious to see how they will handle that. There's a couple more things that I want to get into in regards to the token launch. But before we do that, Stats, be very curious to hear from your perspective what your first thoughts on that PENGU token announcement were.
I think that I mean, we're in a moment right now where tokens are popping off, and I think that Solana tokens are obviously at the core of the meta right now. I mean, it's transferred a bit to AI tokens over on Base and Hype and stuff, but I think this, the Pudgy Penguins hadn't released a token ever. They've teased Abstract, not even just teased it, they've built it out, but it's clearly taking time. And I think this space is about finding good waves and riding them, and I think there was a good wave in front of them, and they're riding it. I just think it's that's kind of my take, as opposed to anything like that's too 4D chess about this being a gas token for Abstract. I think there will still be an Abstract token. I don't think they're going to scrap that. Yeah, I just think this game's all about waves, and they had this bullet kind of ready, and the moment right now is absolute euphoria, for certain tokens, and I think that this is a hope that they're gonna be able to produce that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, as you say, it's all about timing. Seems like that abstract takes more time. We've also seen Saigar on the timeline, who's heavily involved in the abstract team, being very curious about AI agents, feedback in GitHubs, getting involved in that. So clearly, from the perspective of abstract, then thinking where this chain wants to position itself, there's like a complete separate process that's also going on at the moment. But at the same time, as you said, you have a very, very favorable market environment to come out with the PENGU token now, and probably as a result of that, doesn't make sense to necessarily wait for the abstract chain to go live, but then find in the interim, if you actually want to launch that in 2024, and that's only 25 more days that are left in this year, you will have to find a different launch and distribution strategy.
I mean, the other thing I just throw in is like a lot of what abstract is, probably VC funded, an L2, like none of those themes are hot right now. The theme that's hot right now is no VCs and meme coins. And so I can just see where they're just like, all right, let's shift what we're doing into the wave that's currently kind of flowing. But the idea of the abstract token, I think Blast really threw a lot of cold water on it, and so this is just a way to align with the meta that's working right now.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm actually seeing that. I've got a pitch deck on my desk that calls himself a fair VC-backed launch, because the tokenomics are the same for everyone, which means everyone unlocks 100% at TG, including all the VCs, and everyone got in at the same valuation. The only ones who actually have cliff investing are the team, the company itself. So it's becoming that dominant, this meta, that we are now even spinning up words for VC-backed launches to be fair launches and adjusting those tokenomics. But anyhow, the thing that I also want to get into is a bit of the moon mathing, what it actually means, or what it could mean for the Pudgy ecosystem holders. Whale had a post on that to share. He said, I did a little math this morning about the value of the Penguin airdrop for Pudgy Penguin holders. Out of the 88 billion tokens total supply, 26% or 25.9% to be precise, that is 23 billion tokens, go to Pudgy Penguin ecosystem NFT holders. He then went on to take the current floor price ratios. Basically, this is the approach that Bored Apes, or the Bored Ape Yacht Club, also did for the ape launch, to look at the price ratio between apes, mutants, kennels, and figure out how much tokens to distribute to everyone in that ecosystem. For Pudgy Penguins, that would mean 2 million tokens for a big Pudgy, 200K tokens for a little Pudgy, and Rods would get 81K. Assuming a $2 billion FTV, that would be a value of 45.6K USD per Pudgy Penguin, 4.5K USD per little Pudgy, and 1.8K USD per Rod. Current floor pricing for Pudgy Penguins is at 75K. I think it's a bit higher now, around 80K USD. So basically, if you look at that ratio, that would mean that you get 50% of the current floor price value back with the airdrop. There's also been a couple additional things on that, because this is the one thing that I wanted to touch on. There's been this old post by Pudgy Penguins pre-Luca takeover in 2021, where they talked about PENGU. And that was one post that GCR, that legendary trader, commented on back then, saying that basically Doge was the most potent meme of the past decade. Again, that's a 3-year-old tweet, but still, I found it worthwhile to bring up. And PENGU looks like a contender for this decade. PENGU on centralized exchanges and futures would be revolutionary, especially if low unit bias, and I would ape 8+ figures into that. Again, that has nothing to do with the current announcement. That's based on the 3-year-old post, where the former team had hinted a PENGU token, but I still found it worthwhile to bring up. And in conjunction with that, one more figure that I wanted to share is coming from just going to zoom in a bit, from the pre-TGE markets, from Wales market for the Magic Eden token, which obviously saw a bit of FUD yesterday, but has recovered very strongly and is now, again, trading at $4.13. That is against a $2.6 million 24-hour volume, $8 million total volume. Still rather low numbers, but it is a significant move, and it's definitely more significant in terms of the volume than many of the other pre-TGE markets get. So I was wondering if that announcement, of the PENGU token, and maybe also B, the specifics of it being on Solana, might have fostered a bit of a run on that. But before we go into that question, maybe Brett, what do you think about that $2 billion number, $2 billion FTV? That seems to be the range that is, or the number that a lot of people on X on the timeline are circulating. Obviously, that's not financial advice, but just what's your gut feeling about that price point?
I'll take the under on that. And the reason I'll take the under on that is because, like everything you just pointed out, PENGU token from GCR or whatever, like it's the Bored Ape playbook, right? Bored Ape they have Ape. Ape is tied to a chain. It's used for governance. Like it's all the same shit. And when I looked at, even after all this recent pumping of Ape, which again, remind you that Ape is what, 22 ETH floor? What's the PENGU floor? Like 30% below that, 20% below that. And even with the recent ApeCoin pump, it's still at 1.8 fully diluted, right? 1.8 billion. So like if you were to assume, like the ratio doesn't make sense, right? Like if I want exposure to Pudgy, and I'm like, now you have to bet that people who aren't already in the Pudgy ecosystem with an NFT value that's lower than the apes, like the cumulative demand for exposure to Pudgies is more than all of the stuff that's done for Ape, which Ape has an even higher floor, which means it excludes even more people, and like obviously it's price point. So like the math just isn't mathing in my head. I feel like you should take a similar ratio to what's going on between Ape, like the actual Bored Ape ecosystem, like cumulative, and compare that to the token, and then comp that against whatever's going on with Pudgy. That's probably what everyone's going to do. Everyone does comparative analysis here. That's the closest parallel to me, and so I'll take the under. It's 2 billion smooth math.
Fair enough. Funky, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to take the over just to be the contrarian to Bread for a couple different reasons. One, Ape, when it launched, went as high as like something insane, 20 billion or whatever. And that was in the beginning of what amounted to the bear market, right? Because that was like May of 22. So I just feel like because you have such strong, tailwinds in the entire market, like I could see this thing going bananas. And, 2 billion, I think, is a fair number for just like dropping a token, especially for something that is hyped as Pudgy Penguins and how much mind share they have in terms of just a brand overall. So, I think that 2 billion seems like a fair number. I mean, I think Brett makes a good argument for why it could be less. It could be a little bit more, so that maybe it is somewhere around there where it hovers. My biggest regret is that about a year ago, when I did actually want to join the huddle, I looked at the big Pudgies and they were 5 ETH. And I thought, like, maybe I should just get 2 and then hang on to 1 and sell 1 later and blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, that's still too much. So I bought a Lil, and the Lils at the time were like 0.3. I should just bought like 4 or 5 of them. I only bought the 1. So now I feel like I can't sell it either because it needs a little drummer with his GM sign and Christmas lights on. So
love that story. The point you have been making, Brett, is also a point that Whale has raised in the comments to, where is his other post? There we go, here, to his survey that he also conducted to ask about the FTV. And he also said exactly the same with the current Bored Ape market cap versus Ape. FTV for PENGU should be around $1.3 billion. But then it's a new coin. So I think that it could go higher than that.
Clean chart's going to look great. And I do like, there are like, Bored Apes do have a very noisy ecosystem too, right? You have punks, you have all the other side shit. You have like, there's a lot going on there too. So adding up all that relative to the ROGs, to the Lils, to the main, like there's a lot going on. So you got to dive in deep, but I can see a little bit of argument that like maybe the valuation should be higher because it's the new gen thing, but yeah.
Yeah, very, very fair point. Look, definitely also want to hear from our other Pudgy Penguin up on stage. Carlos, welcome to the stage. What are your thoughts on the moon mathing that is going on around the PENGU FTV?
GM. Yeah, no, for once, I think that's very exciting news for our space in general. And I think also the move of choosing Solana is quite smart, removing friction and thus trying to onboard normies through Instagram and all the other platforms they're very active in. So I think this is going to be very bullish. I hope this is the start for the real NFT bull market, and everybody that has been here in the trenches, I think, deserves this kind of news and the allocations that hopefully come to all other communities as well. So yeah, I'm freaking bullish, bro.
Love to hear that. Someone who has been taking a bit more of a critical view was our favorite agent, or at least my favorite AI agent, AI XPT. I had asked him this morning, what do you think about the upcoming PENGU token launch? AI XPT replied, PENGU launching with aggressive team and ecosystem allocation, not seeing any unique incentive mechanisms or innovations. Followed up with a question to get his moon mathing on what FTV range he might see the token, but haven't heard back from AI XPT yet. Definitely will update as soon as I get an answer on that. Stats, also want to go to you for a final comment on the PENGU token launching and on the FTV, what your thoughts are on that, and how the market maybe will even look at it. Ultimately, it launched it on Solana. It has all those billions or 50 billion views on Giphy, on social media. Will people treat that as a meme coin when they trade it? How will the market look at it?
It's hard to say. You know, I'm very bad at the prediction game, very famously bad at the prediction game. So I'm not gonna give an exact number here, but yeah, I think it's, you know, I think it's hard to me, this feels like a meme coin, you know, and again, I still think, and I could be wrong about this, I still think abstract is coming, and I think we want to get some clarity on how like the PENGU token and Pudgy Penguins in general will fit into abstract. I just think there are a lot of unknowns here, but this is a market that, you know, it can send anything. Like this is a market where if people are excited about the right thing at the right time, anything can get sent. So, you know, I mean, is this comparing it to like MOG or ApeCoin? I mean, they're obviously also different. I have a hard time kind of knowing where it's going to fit in, just because like these waves are very hard to predict. You know, I still remember when I was in London 6 months ago, and you know, and there were so many apes that were held in Bendao, and everyone, I'm sorry, penguins held in Bendao, and we were all worried how that was going to get saved, and you know, it felt like no one wanted to touch them. And then 6 months later, you know, obviously the entire crypto ecosystem has completely flipped. It's just wild how quickly these narratives can shift and how quickly sentiment can shift. And but I do think you know, it's clear like penguins have probably the best momentum, the best branding. You know, they're really the only, well, I guess Milady as well, but one of the only NFT projects right now that's reclaiming all-time highs, at least in US dollar terms, but ETH terms, yeah, is certainly within reach here. So, you know, this is, I'd say like NFTs have a bit of momentum. This feels like a meme coin. Meme coins have momentum. Penguins have a ton of momentum. So, you know, who knows? But it feels like there are a lot of good things kind of going for them, and I think that's why they want to get it out in 2024. Which means like in the next couple of weeks, it makes sense that they just want to get it out while the going is good.
Yeah, very much agree with the timing aspect on that. Maybe a follow-up question for you, because obviously NFTs are a momentum asset, and we've seen more money flow into NFTs. You had posted that CryptoPunks have seen a significant increase in terms of unique holders. There now is also a fair amount of excitement, I would say, about the Magic Eden TG, and the pre-market for that is looking good. Are we moving into an NFT season specifically, or is it just an everything bull and we are bidding NFTs as well as part of that? Or do you think that there's like more of a specific momentum forming around NFTs or some of the legacy collections again? Maybe also adding to that, because we had the Chunks mint that we mentioned at the top of the show yesterday, which had surprised me that it ultimately had reached 80,000 and a bit mints.
Yeah, I mean, that Chunks mint, like that was crazy. Like I did not think that we would be sending $3 million to NFT mints anytime soon, and here we are. You know, 3 million sent their way. And what was interesting there is I don't think anybody, like maybe some people thought this was like a punt, but I don't think anyone, like, who thinks that's an 80,000 mint is gonna make you money in this environment? It, you know, if my timeline felt, and my timeline's a bit more kind of art heavy and NFT creator heavy, but it felt like people wanted to like reward these creators at some level, you know. But it didn't. It doesn't feel like the type of investment that's going to pop off, just given the amount of supply that's out there. Like, one thing we're not seeing is new NFT projects minting out and people FOMOing in and making money. we're seeing a bit of money come back to the old stuff. I think I mentioned this a couple of days ago on this show. Bored Apes. There are a lot of Bored Ape holders that own Bored Apes, in the 50 to 100 ETH range, and maybe have sold since then. And now they're rallying. You want to be part of that because you like that brand and you want to be part of something that you were once a part of at higher prices. So I think there are people who are like community members who are getting back involved. I think with CryptoPunks, I do think they're an aspirational NFT kind of for people all across. Like I have friends who are kind of crypto adjacent who want to own a CryptoPunk. So I can like the fact that holders there have gone from 3,500 to 3,900. That's not a ton of holders, 400 more holders around the world, but it basically just shows that you're getting a few new holders, as a bunch of kind of like the older claimers who want a ton are continuing to sell. I shouldn't say starting because they've been doing this for a while. Penguins, like I put penguins in a different category. Like penguins are launching a token. So it's a dividend paying asset. People are like, I want to own it because I want to get that free money, and obviously no money's free and it'll come out of the price. But I think the penguin rally is literally just people positioning for the fact that they have this one and probably two big airdrops coming up over the next 6 months. So I have a hard, Chromie Squiggles, Fidenzas seem like they're having a bit of a moment as well, but I have a hard time getting too excited about like the NFT asset class because we have nothing new really popping off. We don't have people being like, I want to mint 5,000, 10,000 NFT collection, and people like race to get into it, hoping that they're going to double, triple their money. Like that hasn't happened in any way, shape, or form. It just seems like we've had a bit of a return to some of the old favorites. So I don't know. That feels like the market we're in right now. It's hard to say there's really any remnants of kind of where the NFT bull market was last time.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. It kind of also echoes the sentiment of the post that I had put up last week after NFTs had the massive run saying, yes, there's capital flowing into them. I don't think that this necessarily means we'll move into a dedicated season. However, we have 13 minutes left in the show. We have 2 more headlines to cover. So definitely want to move on to the next main headline that had to do with Trump naming ex-PayPal COO David Sachs as the AI and crypto czar. And Brett, you're going to set this one up for us.
Yeah, sure. Let me dive in here. So yeah, you already said the headline itself. So Trump chose David Sachs, who's a venture capitalist, former PayPal CEO, as the crypto czar. So he's also a host of the All In podcast. So people might be familiar with that. I personally am not an avid listener, but I hear good things. I hear a lot of things, some good, some bad. His job, what it will be, is just to work on the legal framework for crypto and AI, and to just in general provide industry clarity. They wanted to. Trump, in his little announcement, wanted to make sure that the U.S. is a leading environment for both of those industries. So, for us, that's great. Being in the crypto industry, and then so what this made me do was I wanted to go, okay, let's see who David Sachs is, what he's talked about, whatever, and did a little grokking of his timeline. And what I've seen is, one, he is a long-term backer, early investor of Solana, and he has also tweeted. We'll say enthusiastic things about Ripple, DYDX, BitTensor, and Caspa, which is another proof of work L1. But anyways, yeah. So just in general, it's the new administration showing early signs that before they're even brought in, that they're going to lean in heavy into elevating this industry, or at least trying to provide clarity to it. We have Elon doing the Department of Government inefficiency, frankly, but government efficiency, trying to tear down some stuff, and this is just another extension of that. So bullish for us if the guy can actually realize what we've been hoping for, which is just rules. Give us rules.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good summary. Just 2 more points, Funky, and then I'm going to go straight to you. To add to that is that Trump also said that part of Sachs' role will be to safeguard online speech, steer us away from big tech bias and censorship. And I think that Sachs has been also talking about meme coins, at least about the Sachs meme coin that's named after him. I don't know if that was on the All In podcast or on his timeline, but he's definitely also familiar with what's going on with that side of things. But Funky, very curious to hear your thoughts on that nomination.
I mean, I think it's bullish overall, right? Like, I'm not going to disagree with the take there. I think it is a good choice. I would just caution people, we're in an industry where people expect instant gratification all the time. I mean, it's already a part of the problem of our culture, broadly speaking, in the US and the West in general. But I think that it's particularly like hyper when it comes to just like the expectation in our industry. And I don't think these things are going to change overnight, right? Like it'll be 6 months into, I think, Trump's tenure, right? It'll be the summer before even serious conversations about any of this stuff really gets going, because the first 100 days of any administration is going to be all about massive priorities. I'm not saying crypto is not part of that. It is, right? It's clearly being indicated and signaled by Trump himself. You know, Kook had a really funny post. I think it was Kook yesterday saying something about how like Trump basically said, "You're welcome for 100K Bitcoin," and effectively took credit for it. And then, you know, he said, if you remember the 2016 to 2020 term, he just, every time there was a new record high in the stock market, Trump was like taking, you know, credit for it. So like he thinks it would be pumping our bags for the next 4 years effectively. But I would urge caution, you know, to any of the listeners, because I think that there is sort of this inbuilt knee-jerk reaction like, oh, Sachs is the crypto czar, we're going to go to the moon immediately. I don't think that's going to happen. Big policy is going to take time to work out. I mean, is he a good choice to lead this? Sure, right? I mean, on his face, again, I don't know Sachs all that well, but just I think in general, it is a good pick overall.
Yeah, that's so good that you share that, because another point that I wanted to bring up, then I'm going to go to you stats in a second, is exactly the first 100 days, because the timeline is definitely more excited about all the things to come than the betting or the prediction markets. If you look at this bet, for example, it has $1 million in volume. The question is, will Trump create a national Bitcoin reserve in the first 100 days? The market only sees a 28% chance of this happening, and 72% is betting against that. One more point that I found entertaining on the timeline was G-Money posting that he's offering to buy David Sachs, a CryptoPunk, before he takes office in January. And someone said he's definitely DeFi pill and is interested in NFTs when it comes to utility, but he doesn't care for PFPs. G-Money made the point he's going to red pill him in 20 minutes or less. Definitely found that entertaining, but also curious to hear your thoughts, stats on David Sachs' nomination.
I was just going to respond to Funky. I think that I don't think that policy really moves the needle that much for crypto. I think sentiment and gestures move the needle for crypto, and I think we're going to get those gestures just ongoing. I think this is like clearly a part of what this administration wants to do. And I think you're going to get signals straight from the start of kind of the desire to be pro crypto. So I think that I'm trying to think like what, short of the government saying that they're going to go buy tons of Bitcoin, which I don't even think is what the Bitcoin reserve, the strategic reserve says. The strategic reserve to me just basically says they're going to kind of ring fence the millions and millions of Bitcoin or of dollars of Bitcoin that the government owns. They're just going to ring fence that and not be selling it. And that to me isn't even that big of a deal for price. But short of the government saying like, we're going to go buy a bunch of stuff, I don't think like actual, like the market cares what gets passed, what doesn't. I think it's just the constant symbolism, the signals, the statements that are going to keep driving the market. And I think that we're going to keep seeing that. I was surprised on Sachs. You know, like my feed, you know, Sachs is extremely, I mean, he's a huge Trump supporter. And I think that the All In podcast is one of the things that had the biggest impact on my demographic, turning a lot of people who I knew to be a bit more left leaning into Trump supporters. And almost all of them were citing David Sachs talking points. Like this guy was huge for Donald Trump. I'm not surprised he got a role. I was surprised that my feed was a little bit more split. Even people who I know are huge Trump supporters were like, this guy's not that serious about crypto. Like, why is, like, I think people see the All In podcast as a bit kind of muted on crypto in a lot of ways. So I was a little bit surprised that my feed was a bit more tepid on the response in terms of its response, even when people who I think would support someone like Sachs. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't think this is like, I don't think that, I think it's more the symbolism. I think it's more giving a role to someone who, I think, is influential, was very influential throughout the campaign, and putting someone like that into kind of like a role like this. So I think the positive symbolism, though, the positive gestures, the positive comments are going to continue. And I think that's actually what drives price, as opposed to like the actual signing of any bill. I don't think that's actually what the market cares about.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate way to look at things. It's ultimately probably also the reason why someone like G-Money would go out there and be like, I'm going to hook David Sachs up with a CryptoPunk if I can get a response from him, or if I can get a connection with him. Should quite frankly also get a Pudgy Penguin and PFP that would be a very positive symbolism for my Pudgy and Pengu bags. But anyhow, we have...
Quick question. Was it
Yeah.
good? I know it's 5 minutes. We got to go. Like, all right. So that like hit that move is like so 2021, right? That's all everyone did to proliferate NFTs. Like, bro, I'll just give you a free one and like do whatever. Do you now, with the benefit of hindsight, do you see that as a successful strategy for getting someone into the ecosystem?
Me?
Yeah, you, anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do. I think it is. If I think about Pudgy Penguins, and obviously I'm talking my own bags here, but seeing Vanek with the Pudgy PFP, that, let me check, I think they still are rocking it. Seeing Kaito had the Pudgy PFP, they don't have it anymore. Vanek still has it. I do think it's relevant if you have this mission to really get the utmost reach and get those views on social media, get those billions of views on Giphy. Just given the fact that, like, my dad is 70 years old and he's sending me Pudgy gifts, and he did send them to me before he even knew that this is an NFT. I can experience, like, I can imagine that other people will have that experience and they will see a Pudgy gif and they will be, I don't know, maybe in the TradFi world or TradFi adjacent, and see the Vanek PFP and see, oh, this is a Pudgy as well. And they used Pudgies for their commercial of introducing the ETH ETF, that this is helpful to an overall media strategy. I don't think you can focus your entire media strategy on that and say, like, the only way we proliferate NFTs and culture is by sending our NFTs to influential people, which is what a lot of collections did, right? Bored Apes did the honoraries, basically every other collection also, not every other, but lots, the majority of major collections did honoraries as well. And there's also a popular move, if you have a new collection, to sell a couple of those to the big traders back then, to the Nate Alexes and Pranksies, and kind of make the timeline think, oh, they bought into this, so I better buy into this as well. So I think on its own, it can't stand. It can't be a successful strategy. But if you do it in the way that Pudgies do it, I do think that there is a lot of merit and value to it. Alrighty, let's move on to the last headline. As we said at the top of the show, Bitcoin broke through 100K, went up all the way to 104, and then had dumped to 92K, has recovered. Let me refresh the price to see if there's any surprises. Yes, we are at 97.8K now. And we have seen, sharing the data on screen from CoinGlass, seen a total of $487 million wrecked, liquidated over the last 24 hours, 460 million of that being liquidated in longs, the other 70 mil being liquidated in shorts. And there was a good post by, gonna try to pronounce the name, Feijao. Spaces host has also good macro content. And they were digging a bit more into the perp data, saying that open interest and funding now is back to where it was a couple of days ago. This is not the full classic liquidation cascade that we often see in this space. You can also see that is the point that I'm making, because most of the alts haven't really budged. They haven't dumped as well. This ramp in open interest was specifically people opening longs on the 100K breakout, leading to a huge surge in funding rates into the 100% API area, the danger zone. And his thought is, or their thought is, that it was leveraged longs chasing post 100K breakout. It's something inevitable. It cannot be stopped that this happens. And this is bullish because instead of stacking further leverage onto the market, stretch the price to say 115K, we reverted, flushed out this breakout, open interest, and liquidated those longs. Also, interesting side comment on that was that AIXPT, someone posted a screenshot from the terminal that you can use if you have, 120K tokens, or no, 600,000 tokens, I'm sorry, like $120,000 worth of tokens roughly. Basically predicted the same movement, 104 down to 92, and then a recovery from that. But definitely want to hear from you stats on that, given that we had that discussion on the open interest yesterday.
Sorry, say the question one more time.
Yeah, absolutely. On this open interest situation that we've seen yesterday with funding rates going into the 100% APR, and obviously now that leveraged long exposure being flushed out.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of leverage in the system, and I think there's always a lot of leverage in the system, but particularly when you have these bull runs. I mean, just on Hyperliquid right now, the APY to go long Solana is 100%. The APY to go long ETH is like 80%. So I mean, and I think that's kind of true across per platform. So anytime there's a big down move and people get washed out, there's a lot of forced selling. So I think anyone who's been in this game long enough has seen these kind of like that's the nature of these candles. But the funding rates are, I mean, it kind of calmed down a little bit after the move yesterday. But even like I said, even now, Solana funding rates on Hyperliquid are over 100% APY. So people are paying a lot of money for leverage. That means people, like if people are paying that much, that's because there's a lot of leverage already in place, and that means that any down move can lead to forced selling, and we certainly saw that yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other side of that, also if you currently look into stablecoin lending, APY on that is anywhere between 25 to 30%. So I think that sums it up perfectly. Obviously, we did flush out a good amount of leverage, but those funding rates are still very, very insane and show the appetite of the market to want to be long on certain or what not only on certain assets, but actually on most of the assets right now.
I actually never used Hyperliquid, even though War Daddy was in my DMs forever, just being like, dude, use, like, get going. And then finally, after all the free money, not free money, after all the insane airdrop was given to so many people, I started using it yesterday. They default you when you put on a trade. If you go on to Hyperliquid and put on your first trade and decide you want to go long ETH or whatever, it defaults you to being long 20x leverage. So I put on a trade and I looked down. I'm like, why the fuck am I long 20x leverage? It's because that's actually what they default you to on Hyperliquid. So just a word for everyone else who doesn't want to be going long 20x with whatever they put on. Know that that's. I mean, the fact that that's the default though, and that no one's even commented on it in like a year of this being a massive product, or at least I haven't seen it on my feed, to me says like just how much we like our leverage around here.
Yeah, I think that's pretty telling. But also we are unfortunately out of time for the show today. Thank you very much, Brad and Funky, for co-hosting the show with me. Thank you to everyone who joined us in the audience, who joined us in the YouTube comments. Thank you to you, Stats, and to you, callers, for joining us on stage as well. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, live on X, live on YouTube, and also post the recordings of the show to Spotify, to Apple Podcasts, post clips of the things that we say on the show on YouTube as well. So feel free to follow us there as well. In the meantime, have a great weekend. We will be back on Monday.